So abortion rights is the product of a merger of an organisation, the Abortion Law Reform Association, which was formed in the 1930s and was responsible for getting the 1967 Act through, and the National Abortion Campaign, which was a grassroots street-led movement that was formed in the 1970s in the immediate response to the pushbacks to the 67 Act. They merged in 2003 to form Abortion Rights, and I'm really proud that Abortion Rights is the name on the can. And we're the only grassroots campaign in the UK at the moment. Since the 70s, we've been put in quite a defensive mode, but I think that we've become a lot braver about saying that we want decriminalisation. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We have a variety of different sort of ways of campaigning, and we're a feminist organisation. And one of the nice things about feminist organisations is they're collaborative and push hard. We often have disagreements, but that's part of being an organisation that pushes hard for change. One of the things that Diane Monday told me as a story about when the 67 Act was enacted was that even in Parliament, when they were celebrating, she wouldn't let her campaigners have full glasses of champagne because she said that we'd only done half the job. The 67 Act legalised abortion in certain circumstances and put the decision in the hands of the doctors. It should be in the hands of women and pregnant people who need it, and that is what decriminalisation needs to do. And I think when people are so shocked now about the decision to roll back Roe v. Wade in America, which has global implications, the antis are globally networked, and so we need to be globally networked as well. And that's why we are giving full solidarity. When we heard the news of the leak at the beginning of May, we organised an immediate demonstration at the US Embassy. We organised a march from Parliament to the US Embassy in mid-May, and then we organised something on Friday night as well, which we had been planning to do. We want you to know that we're about to launch a demonstration alongside the activists in the US who've called it for Saturday the 9th of July. So we're going to be marching from Trafalgar Square to the US Embassy on Saturday the 9th of July. And to make sure that we are not clashing with Trans Pride, we will be doing it from 4 p.m. I want to say this is quite emotive for me, and things have happened very quickly. So I'm not as polished as I would like to be. As we all know, I think I'd sort of planned a speech that explained some of this, but as we know, the US Supreme Court decided on one of the most important cases on reproductive rights in decades. So Jackson Women's Health Organization, which was the last remaining abortion clinic in Mississippi, put a challenge towards the state law that was passed that banned abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, including in cases of rape and incest. And the Supreme Court determined not just on the fate of that clinic, but on the monumental 1973 ruling Roe v. Wade, which legalised abortion nationwide and legalised it on the basis of privacy. So an attack on privacy is also an attack on the right to get contraception, on the right to equal marriage, on even things like being able to decide for yourself on your healthcare decisions, the right to refuse healthcare treatment. Let's face it, this is because Trump administration stacked the Supreme Court with right-wing anti-choice appointments. This is a plan they've had for decades. They've been putting judges in the lower courts for decades now, and it's a strategy employed by the Republican Party. There was always an inherent weakness in Roe v. Wade because it was the product of a legal ruling, not a federal law. And it is the Democrats' shame that they have not they've not codified abortion rights into law. And that's something that is coming back to bite them. Rolling back abortion rights is racially motivated. It's affecting women of colour and the poorest communities, the most vulnerable communities. We've always known that. We've always known that rich women can get abortions and poor women can't. It's a desire by the right to change the demographics of the US from a trend moving away from, there is a trend moving away from a white majority and because of the necessity for, this is an anti-capitalist resistance meeting, so I think that everyone understands that because they've relied on immigrant labour, they're now sort of clutching their pearls about dominant country of colour. So this is where we are. And I think that this has been a huge shock. I have to say, I was a bit disappointed at the level of resistance after the leak happened, but I think that the decision this week has really shocked people, and I think there will be a huge fight going on, and thousands of activists turned up on the steps of the Supreme Court to show their force within hours of the leaked draft and within hours of the ruling. And we have had, large numbers of US citizens who are living in London and around country come to our demonstrations. So we're sort of in solidarity with them, but I think that we also need to say loud and clear that we won't accept any rollbacks here. And I've definitely heard murmurings of similar sort of right-wing antis in the UK try to push buttons to roll back rights as well. So I think that we need to demonstrate just as keenly to send that message that it's not acceptable here. I don't think it's a massive surprise that the Supreme Court, just five of them were able to roll back decades of rights. I don't think it's that much of a surprise that they are out of touch with US society. Out of 114 of them, only 6 have ever been anything other than white men. And I'm including the newest Jackson Brown appointee. But at least 2/3 of the US population are in favour of women's right to choose. So we have to do the work to make sure that they are represented and to demonstrate our solidarity. I think it's an understatement to say it's a significant setback for abortion rights, not just in the US, but it will embolden anti-choice activists that are making their voices heard in Poland, in Malta, etc., where the struggle for access is already quite desperate. And I think any chink in the legislative armour that undermines the right to privacy makes access more difficult, and it puts abortion funding out of reach that will impact poorer and marginalised women and pregnant people, and will encourage yet more anti-abortion legislation and action. We know that the inaction and the link with the anti-gun control lobby shows us that this isn't about being pro-life at all. It's about policing our bodies. It's about control over women. And the struggle for women's liberation and the fight to control our own bodies needs to be a fight, needs to be a struggle. Abortion rights wants to commit solidarity to the US and say squarely that we don't want any rollbacks to our rights. And there's a "Bands Off Our Bodies" slogan, which I think says quite a lot. I just wanted to go a little bit into why we should care over here and how the movement is a sort of globally networked movement. The anti-choice religious right is numerically small, and they are on the fringes of society. And we know that in the UK, they sort of operate through very fringe evangelical churches and a few Catholic backwaters. We know that they're not even the majority of mainstream Christian faith, but they are emboldened in the US, and we see that here as well. I attended a counter protest to March for Life in March, and they were buoyant then. I think it was gross to see, actually, after the announcement of the ban in Texas. And in the UK, 3 anti-choice amendments were added to the Health and Care Bill heard in Parliament in January. So they're highly motivated. We saw Danny Kruger sort of stand up and commit his anti-choice views to Hansard recently, which I think is quite odd, but he's clearly setting a sort of marker down, and it will encourage more people to come forward. I don't want there to be any room for complacency. I don't think anyone here is complacent, but we have to meet their protests with counter protests. We have to organise letters to MPs, we have to do all the basic lobbying work, and we have to make sure that our supporters are armed with the facts and the arguments to make the case effectively to our MPs, our unions and our colleagues. And I think this being armed with the facts is really important as a sort of generational thing, because so I'm in my 40s, and I think that even sort of my generation don't necessarily know it's a problem until they've gone through the process and they come to me and say, did you know I had to plead my case, I had to get 2 doctors' signatures, etc. So I think there is a sort of slight complacency about how legal abortion is. But there's a really powerful story from a student. She got pregnant, she didn't want to be. She went online to find out where she could go and get an abortion, where the clinic was. She was based in Glasgow, obviously there are clinics in Glasgow, but she only found a story on the internet of a clinic in Edinburgh where anti-choice harassment was happening, and she thought that was the only clinic she could go to. So she got on a train to Edinburgh and made an appointment. They couldn't give her an appointment, and told her that she could go to Glasgow and get one through her GP. And she just learned a real lesson there. And I think that even though the cat's out of the bag with abortion pills available and a network of people who will help those who need abortions online, the way information is controlled online is quite dangerous. And I think that we just can't rely on information being available. We have to look at how it's made available. And I know that on the one hand, TikTok has a really great trend at the moment where people are putting the Chainsmokers song up, which is When We Go Down Together, and giving people information and support. But on the other hand, Facebook and Instagram are shoving danger messages over information about getting abortion pills in much more voracious way than they were for guns or other illicit substances. So I think that information is the religious right understand how to get information across as well. And although they're numerically small, they are well funded and well linked up politically. The other thing that's happening in the UK is a sort of assault on our human rights, and we are going to have to assert the right to abortion to be a human right. It is a human right, and it's also a healthcare right. So we need to be making those arguments clearly and without that much nuance. We're just going to have to be really clear about it and get those points across. So I'd really urge you to do a couple of things. We need support, and we need coordinated support. And if you're part of a union branch or a student branch, it would be really great if you could affiliate to Abortion Rights, not just for the money, but the money helps, but for the political statement that we need as many people as possible to be part of our movement, and we need to consolidate the movement. We don't have the funding that the religious right has, so we're solely funded by our individual members and our affiliates. And then please join in our actions and stay kind of on top of some of the things that we need your support with, whether it be writing to your MP, signing petitions, coming out on demonstrations, organising demonstrations. All of those things will be needing to happen in the next few months. We're going to have a summer of rage.